Candace Owens came to me in a dream and told me that killed Charlie Kirk, just because that was the
That's
funniest.
how I get my
thing.
information.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, like it just for me, if something feels too low frequency and easy in terms of embracing that narrative, I feel like the critical thinking aspect of remaining skeptical matters more than anything, and especially when you're wading through this very well manufactured disinformation campaign, which I do believe she's a key part of. And this doesn't mean she doesn't reference things that are of high importance, and even make legitimate points that are credible as well. And
Do you
hopefully
think she knows it?
That's a
I
great
think she
question.
does, because I do. Well, I think there's a level of now. See, this is just my opinion. Obviously, I'm speculating. I don't know her, but I do believe there is plenty of evidence tying her back to the Tavistock Institute and essentially being in an arranged marriage with her now husband.
Top Lobster Productions.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Nephilim Death Squad. I am David Lee Corbo, a.k.a. The Raven, a.k.a. new haircut, looking super handsome, super cool
haircut?
shirt. Don't call me haircut. That's not nice. Stop producing me two
My
things.
bad. What's up, Tank Top?
That's Top Lobster, the father of calling me Tank Top. Before we get into today's guest, a little reminder. We're going to go live exclusively to patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad at the half an hour mark. If you want to continue engaging in the live chat, watching this episode, gaining early access to episodes before the general public, as well as ad-free listening experiences, plus
Do it there.
early dibs on tickets to Bohemian Grove, which will happen the first Friday and Saturday of March here at the Standard Coffee Shop, which is where we coming at you.
Oh, hey, look at
live
that.
From
First post there, a tagged post, a man tightly tied in with our current guest. Wow.
That is true. That's an interesting.
It's an interesting thing that we
What
look
an
at. We
ecosystem
look past
is
it.
developing here.
Wow. Let's introduce the guest.
Oh, well, toplobster.com. Also joining us today is Austin.
Oh, wait up. We actually could. Sound effects are back today.
We got our buttons back, baby. Thank you for joining us once again, Austin. It's always awesome to hang out with Austin. Awesome, Austin. Austin, before we get into the conversation, let's talk a little bit about where people can find you and what it is that you do, baby.
Awesome, brother. You already know, boys. I love you, and I appreciate you.
No, we love you, dude.
It's always a good time every time we get a chance to have a conversation, and you guys kind of you at least ground me in a way that I think is necessary at certain points during my kind of avenue of thought, because unfortunately it was hilarious. I did an interview the other day with the Jackman brothers, and my wife tells me she calls me just before we go live, right? And she says, "Stay on task." This is who grounds me in my day-to-day sort of reality and lifestyle. So again, it's important, I think, to connect yourself with someone who understands who you are, but also wants to bring the best out of you in a certain way. And I think, man, over the course of my lifetime, just as far as my limited experience, like I've very much developed this kind of philosophy of eradicating the dead weight, just in terms of not necessarily claiming that I'm not willing to, have conversations and relationships with people who are obviously in dire need of some, maybe they're in some sort of a pit of despair in a way due to certain decisions they made along, the just kind of, that strange experience we all go through as we learn who we are in a certain way. And I think that's the most important part, is to reflect on what moral values you kind of really can stand on principally. And so, yeah, I love being able to engage with people that I know have good intentions, and I can kind of see just the good hearts behind, the personality. And I think whenever that shines through, you've definitely found yourself in kind of this opportunistic, just position that you should take advantage of, and I just, but not take for granted, and I think that that's the other thing, is that, I really have grown to respect the relationships that I've cultivated over the course of this process of just doing the podcast in itself. And I
How
always
long have you been doing this, Austin?
it was April 2023, I think. So
You've made
not very long.
good friends with good people really
Did
quickly.
like a speed run
Yeah.
through the
And-
process. It's,
Yeah.
Man, it's really all due to Sam. Honestly, you brought him up, and I always try and reference how much he's done for me, just opening the door and kind of introducing me to people, just through being willing to have that open-minded and objective conversation with basically anyone he finds interesting. And that in itself, the law of abundance, is something
Yeah.
I very much admire, and try and live by that in a certain way as well. And so, yeah, I just think there are always, and I've said this before, I mean, there are plenty of seats at the table. You just have to kind of put in the effort and the commitment, and be, in a way, disciplined enough to kind of pursue things in an objective way. And that's where most people, I think, there's an appetite, a very, large appetite for genuine authenticity. And anytime, this is my biggest frustration in terms of like the influencer industrial complex that's being leveraged.
Oh, I like that. The influencer
Yeah.
industrial
we
complex.
part of it.
My favorite.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, we are, though, but it's strange because I feel like we're kind of surrounded at this current moment, and just by limited hangouts and sort of misdirection, social engineering tactics of control and deception, and they're being so efficiently, leveraged against us and implemented at a certain level. I see people like that are so prominent in this sort of environment, like a Candace Owens, right? Who's kind of taking the spotlight in a certain way and setting the narrative, in my opinion, as far as also Brad brought up to me the concept of her essentially kind of, being the justification basically for a further crackdown on just influencers in general and content creators who are providing dissenting opinions and dissenting
Is this
voices.
by way of so because she's talking about, or because she's talking about even like lizard people, right? Because she kind of had a
Right.
reptilians kind of a thing lately.
It is a funny, like that little overlap into conspiracy. It's allowed them to be like, Candace is out of her mind. She's completely crazy. She said X, Y, Z. Maybe some of the things that she said has been outlandish. A lot of it has been salacious, I would
Sure.
say, where she's like, you
Right.
got to tune into today's episode because we're going to blow the roof off of whatever.
The Jews.
Yeah, again, the Jews. And then she'll slip in the lizard people. And when I saw that clip, I said, hey, maybe.
I
right.
went, not bad. I kind of like it. I'm not bad at it.
Hey,
But
it opens the door. I do believe that, but yeah, it's very interesting to me because Tucker's kind of following that very similar path, right? And
I would
will
almost argue
say,
that Tucker went there first, right? Because think about when he was
Yes.
talking about the Nephilim. He's talking about,
This is when we first started the show.
yeah.
The meme Nephilim shit was something that we were doing, and then we saw that start moving through the zeitgeist, and it was a weird thing to not to be like we did it,
But like we were
Right. We did
over
it.
the target, and it was
we
totally
did it
our
though,
doing.
honestly. Like there,
It was a
there-
weird
look,
time.
man. Before I even knew you guys, right? I knew of Nephilim Death Squad basically, and I just saw, obviously I think it was probably through Sam that I directly came across your content. But as soon as I did, it just, as far as resonating with me in terms of the taboo subjects that you seem to be willing to approach in this, like I mentioned, objective manner, where you bring light to the conversation in a way that's very necessary. And I think that's important. I've kind of been reinterpreting the clown pill as of late, in my own sort of way. It's not necessarily the traditional use of the term, but essentially my new interpretation is basically just we're intended to. Now I appreciate the kind of clown pill aspect of bringing humor to the equation, because it's very necessary throughout the process of demoralization, right?
Yes.
And it's funny too, because like the clown pill is something that we've been getting away from as we got into the coffee shop.
Yeah.
We're
I think we're getting
with this
back
guy.
in. Can we get back
We're
into
trying to, but it's like this guy Matt Hepner really kind of took clown pill and he just embodied it.
Yeah, and I think that's probably it. It's like we're working with a guy who it's almost overbearing.
Always joke time with him.
Constantly joke time.
Yeah,
with him.
and it's like we can't really get a word in edgewise. Nothing ever
or like
serious.
talk about anything serious. Yeah, and
yeah.
It's
And
kind
I
of,
say, you know what? Did I sin?
Are we the serious ones in the room now? I think that's what's going on.
Look at me.
Yeah,
I'm the serious.
I'm the serious one now.
Oh my God.
I get it. Well, look, I mean, I think you're absolutely right, though. The humor has to, because there are so many things that are propositioning you at any given moment, and the proposition is be sad, be upset, be in despair, be demoralized, like you said. And I refuse. I refuse to be demoralized. Why would I? I mean,
That's right, Tank Top.
don't call me tank top, don't call me haircut, and don't call me them in conjunction. But yeah, I just feel like we believe in God. That's Jesus Christ is in many ways the cornerstone. This is a foundation that we built this whole thing on. How am I going to have despair? How am I going to be sad knowing that this all ends with God winning? And it's like, I think that it's constantly, we talk about it. The Bible tells you to fear not. Not giving into fear is a huge, what would you call it? Like, it's like a rule on this show. It's
principle.
It's a principle that we stand on. And so knowing that, and then looking around at all the shit that's constantly telling you and I look at sadness and I look at anger as akin to fear, because it emerges in different ways. Some people, they get afraid and that'll evoke sadness within them. And some people get afraid and that'll evoke anger in them. So I try to stay away from all that, because I'm not going to give in to that. The world wants you to be afraid, and I don't think you should. So yeah, comedy takes the piss out of that.
Brother, I think that's the true underlying goal in terms of the social engineering and the mind virus contagion that has been very much conditioned into the vast majority of the general public. And but as far as with Candace, I explained it as Candace Owens came to me in a dream and told me that killed Charlie Kirk, just because that was the
That's
funniest.
how I get my information.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, like it just for me, if something feels too low frequency and easy in terms of embracing that narrative, I feel like the critical thinking aspect of remaining skeptical matters more than anything, and especially when you're wading through this very well manufactured disinformation campaign, which I do believe she's a key part of. And this doesn't mean she doesn't reference things that are of high importance, and even make legitimate points that are credible as well. And
Do you
hopefully
think she knows it?
That's a
I
great
think she
question.
does, because I do. Well, I think there's a level of now. See, this is just my opinion. Obviously, I'm speculating. I don't know her, but I do believe there is plenty of evidence tying her back to the Tavistock Institute and essentially being in an arranged marriage with her now husband. And basically, he's tied to military intelligence, and really the same company that financed Tucker's new show is also directly connected into this same network. And so it seems like when she had the epiphany and the vision to go to London, right? It turns out, with Charlie, by the way, that's where she inevitably, at one point, the claim is she was one of the founding Freemasons of Turning Point USA. And so I definitely, yes.
They just letting black people in?
I didn't know that black people could be Freemasons. That's fun, dude.
But I mean,
No, actually, I I worked with a black guy that was a Freemason.
Shaq is a Freemason, but I thought they just let him in because he's 17 feet tall and they had no option.
Nephilim stuff.
Yeah, he would crush them with his hands.
Sorry, please continue. This is
you're
it's all
good.
joke time with this guy.
Sorry, I'm very sorry.
Hey, the Boule is real, and I think there are, sort of racial factions of secret societies and fraternal organizations that are obviously, just utilized in this very prominent fashion in terms of running domestic operations. And that definitely occurred as far as Kamala Harris was tied back to this Freemasonic police force, right? That essentially was a fake police force that had even outfitted old police cars to look as if they were still, active and legitimately an actual police vehicle, at that moment. And then they would dress up as police officers and go around raiding various organizations and businesses, and then kind of, in some sort of mafia sort of tactic, right? Force them into submission in a way, and to become a part of the network, and sort of utilize them for protection in the area. But that definitely happened, and it was proven. And one of the individuals who was tied back to Kamala was actually exposed and inevitably claimed when he blew the whistle that he was, yes, a part of the Boule, had constructed this Freemasonic police force because they claimed they could function within all these various jurisdictions, even internationally, going down to Mexico. And that's, it was very interesting when they were actually, the authorities cracked down on this when it was exposed. But the individual, it was essentially covered up because the individual who blew the whistle, I forget his name now, but he basically winds up, first of all, he claims they're going to kill me, and then he winds up dead, right? Worst case you've ever seen.
You hear so many stories of that, by the way, where it's like there's a psychological break, and among all the chaos, they might manage to mutter something like they're going to kill me. I think Martin Lawrence, like famously on the set of Blue Streak.
Martin Lawrence.
Yeah, dude. Runs out. He's in his like tank top and underwear, and he's waving a gun, and he's saying they're trying to kill him. And they basically called it like a manic episode, and then whatever, they subdued him, I guess, and then they were like, let's finish Blue Streak, and and it was a great movie.
My God. I do believe that there are many different assets within Hollywood that are clearly kind of managed and handled. They have handlers that are assigned to them. That was something that Candace actually said recently, right? Which was the fact that she believes she and Charlie were assigned handlers at a specific moment in time. And that was around when they were kind of orchestrating that meeting with Kanye, which is very interesting because that plays perfectly into that of Harley Pasternak and the sort of military intelligence, chemical warfare, mind war operative that was basically the handler of Kanye and said, right, threatened to send him back to zombie land. Play dates with the kids will never be the same. I mean, that it's hard to dismiss, especially seeing his recent meeting with that Kabbalistic rabbi from Morocco.
Yeah, where he's kissing his hand and everything, right?
It's the same rabbi that LeBron James met with, right?
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, while he was doing that major Nike deal, apparently negotiating that contract in like 2010 or something.
Yeah, LeBron James is supposed to be part of the Boule Society as well.
I had so in this coffee shop, there's a lot of like older Christian people, and I have conversations with a lot of them. And just yesterday, we had a conversation with a nice guy named Norm.
Yeah, you were talking to him, a conversation. You talked to him for like 2 hours.
No, I let him talk. I let him say what he's saying because I do agree. Like I'm conflicted with the part of biblical, because I'm like, clearly there is a covenant. If the Bible says there's a covenant between God and these people, fine. But then I'm like, what about the crimes? And he's like, what crimes? And I'm just like laying him out. And the dude's looking at me. He's like, and I'm like, yeah, dog.
He's like,
there's
that's crimes. A lot of crimes.
I was like, Kanye West just met with the rabbi and apologized to him for all the stuff that he tweeted. Right. I'm like, why is that?
That was that the deal? Like,
I don't know.
Is that what's supposed to?
I have not been given a satisfactory answer. So there's two things. There's always these two things in my mind.
I thought it was a sneaker merge that he was doing with the rabbi. Kanye was doing like a sneaker collaboration with the rabbi. I don't know what it was. That's interesting.
There's no satisfactory answer, and there's I haven't been given a reason why we should accept the crimes of these people. But as we're reading the Bible, because this is what we've been focusing on now, we've been reading the Bible, focusing on these studies. There's a lot of stuff about God's chosen people. That is true. But we just read through a passage where God's chosen people got eaten by the ground. It was, yeah, it's like the ground opened up, ate them up, and shut its mouth. And I was like, those are too.
Yeah.
And then we read another passage where they were like, how are we going to lie to this guy so that way everybody here dies?
Yeah. Well, that's
And
the
then
thing
they
is, like,
did.
I don't think we're meant to not criticize them.
No, we're meant to
But
not.
you're not supposed to curse them, and that's a different thing. And
Yeah,
we
no,
talked
man,
about
dude.
that a bunch, and we're not cursing them.
Like right on, but
You dumb.
no,
I hope you figure out that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, and you guys missed the whole Messiah thing. But I mean, like, you're not supposed to curse them.
Right.
But throughout the Bible, yeah, they do.
It's just been
horrific shit.
It's fun walking that line now in real life with people because a lot of people don't have access to people like Austin Picard, who's going to like lay out foundationally why
All the crimes.
I just think with
yeah.
go ahead. I just thought that with the modern state of I view it's a strategic blurring of the lines between religion and politics by design. And in my mind, I see it as hijacking really the almost kind of a false representation of the Jewish people even at large. And I think that just fundamentally kind of dumbing it down to a level where you blame the average Jewish peasant class for the just totalitarian dystopian sort of policies that have come out of the modern state of. I think you're missing the boat, and that's a low hanging fruit in a serious way, to the point to where you will fall into a trap ideologically, and you will blame a collective group for things that they're not directly responsible for, and that in itself is a huge mistake. And I think it's led people who I very much admire and respect into that sort of mentality and outlook and perspective, and as if the modern state of didn't exist in this moment, all of our problems would go away. And that is just such a misconception, in my opinion. And I see, I view it as they're deliberately attempting to manufacture a false prophecy, and that doesn't make a true, legitimate divine prophecy, in any way. It doesn't discredit it in any real way. I think it.
No, but I would
anything,
agree with you, Austin. It does look like they're manufacturing prophecy on a lot of different levels.
Can you manufacture a prophecy?
Well, that's the question. Is like, just because it's made by a man, is it not, or is it the fulfillment of prophecy? But it seems pretty clear to me that on many levels, they are orchestrating elements, prophetic elements.
Did they orchestrate the Columbine?
Oh yeah, I forgot we were supposed to talk
Hey
about
man,
this.
I will say there is a Jewish component that I was unaware of in terms of.
Of course there is. There's always a Jewish.
I don't want to know. I mean, because it's. Do you see the problem here? I'm trying to be better, but it's just like you're just being blapped by.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, unless he's going to tell us that the whole thing was about foreskin and the missing foreskin of the Columbine shooters, I don't think it's I think it's everything you look in. There's going to be these little elements. So, yeah, we're trying to be better, but you still got to say what it is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think that it was very strange that I discovered that there's a connection to Dylan Klebold. Basically, his mother was from this very prominent Jewish family, and it was very strange because also there's this obvious and very clear just kind of I described it as the crossroads between Columbine and 9/11. And it really blows me away as far as Columbine happening in April 19th of 1999. And then obviously not long after we have 9/11 take place. And I think knowing the background of Eric Harris's father, Wayne Harris, who's directly, involved with military intelligence, even working for Flight Safety Services Corporation, which would train some of the 9/11 hijackers in their flight simulation program. And he was very much a part of that. And I think there's no coincidence in terms of also John Bennett Ramsey, who was the father of John Benet Ramsey, was also in that same exact area, and the head of an organization that was directly utilizing the same flight simulation software of Flight Safety Services Corporation, which is just fascinating in itself, let alone Dylan Klebold's born on 9/11, September 11th. Then you have Eric Harris fantasizing in his journal, right, his diary, about him and Dylan essentially escaping after, because basically it was supposed to, Columbine was intentionally, well, if we're to believe the official narrative in terms of what their intention was with the actual operation itself, or the mass shooting, they wanted it to initially be a bombing and only secondarily a shooting, because they wanted to actually, that's why they had developed over 99 different bombs, dry ice bombs, pipe bombs, propane bombs, and they had rigged up the school, which is fascinating in itself, because they still very much like not very well documented as far as how the school was actually rigged with these bombs, because again, allegedly, we're to believe that they rigged the school that morning, which, I mean, that's ridiculous to me, as far as them not being noticed by any of the authorities at the school. None of the students noticed anything, even in the exact same moment where they allegedly were seen on the cameras bringing in their black bags, which had some of the pipe bombs and some of their guns in them. They allegedly put those bags with the rest of the students' backpacks and things like that. But the moment where that footage was actually just caught by the surveillance cameras at the school happened to be when the custodian and janitor of the school decided to swap the tape out at that exact moment. So we don't have the actual footage of that taking place, which we would have had allegedly. And so again, I watched all the surveillance tapes from the cafeteria, which is where it was the cafeteria and the library where the majority of the deaths took place. And they were kind of on top of each other. The library was above the cafeteria. And that's why you see one of the victims who's like climbing out of one of the broken windows on the top floor of the library. And he's just dangling there until the authorities actually go and pull him out. But it's super nuts. And just seeing how the response itself was ridiculous, as far as like, they didn't even enter the school for hours. It was around 4 hours. Yeah.
Can we rewind for a second? Because you touched on something there that's super fascinating, and it's an element that has appeared before. And it's this situation where some sort of, I don't know how you would describe it. Well, you said that it was John Benet Ramsey's father was involved. And I want to go back to that and talk about how that was. I think it bears reiteration. But also, what's that situation where it was like the fathers of like the Sandy Hook shooter and like I think it was like the Batman, the Aurora, Colorado shooter. Yeah, and it was like both of these dudes, both fathers of these people were involved in some sort of I think it was like a court case revolving around video game violence or something to that. Do you know what I'm talking about? Because I'm going to butcher it.
No, definitely. I actually went on Tinfoil Hat the last time with Brad to discuss this exact same subject as far as the LIBOR connection.
Shout out to Brad.
The LIBOR.
Shout out to Brad Binkley.
Oh yeah, we gotta have him back on.
Yeah. You guys are killers.
Mm-hmm.
You
Brad's
guys are
the best, man.
Oh, what one? I mean, again, really quick plug. I know we're gonna do a lot of plugs.
Let's do it.
Because you didn't mention it. We asked you to do a plug, and you were like, "I just really like you guys."
I like that. That's why I asked him about plugs.
I'm sorry.
Go to I guess the whatever this is podcast. That's only on your Patreon, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's
guys,
the
go
paywall
there.
show. Mm-hmm.
This is Brad Binkley. This is Austin Picard and Sam Tripoli. What a
great show that
to
needs
put behind a paywall.
I know. Well, I'm glad that good. Put it behind a paywall. It's worth the money. But that's a damn good show, dude.
Yeah.
And Sam's been talking about, I know at one point he had mentioned we should start like slow releasing the earlier episodes at a certain point. So that'll be cool. Yeah, I think we should probably end up doing that, drive a little bit more attention to it as well. But yeah, it's a blessing, man. I couldn't be more grateful for that, just having that opportunity. And then also just, man, there's just something about the two of them. I couldn't feel more like I'm just having a conversation with my friends, with my buddies.
That's
And
awesome.
it's very similar to whenever we have conversations, it's like, um, and I kind of, in many ways, as ridiculous as it sounds, I see a little bit of myself in Sam occasionally, which is hilarious as far as the self-critical nature of kind of overly criticizing yourself in almost a self-defeating way. And I'm not condemning him or or in any way judging him, but because I suffer from the exact same plight as in terms of just you know I have goals of discussing certain things whenever I go on a show, and if I don't necessarily get there, I have this feeling of failure, and it's almost like it's only what I know I left on the table at a certain level, which is frustrating, because it seems like the vast majority of the audience seems to have a positive reaction, and
That's really what matters, dude. You
yeah,
gotta
And it's
look at that.
honestly, a lot of it is our fault because we just had you on the LIBOR scandal, and I'm like, well, let's plug.
Well,
the
that's
show.
I was just putting it here just to keep it, but
Yeah.
I do want to talk about this a little bit.
we're
We
like
got
doing damage to his
I
psyche.
know, I
We're
know.
just constant
Come
derailment.
over here, come over here.
Yeah.
But I do want to suck off Sam Tripoli for a second,
Whoa.
because
Whoa.
it's huge. That guy paved the way for guys like us. You know what
I
I
was
mean?
just talking to Frank in the front. There's a guy who gave us a large donation. He's not like a wealthy man, but in the coffee shop. So we were doing, and he's like, yeah, I just like to practice abundance. And I was like, there's a guy
Yep.
named Sam Tripoli. He's kind of raunchy,
And that's the
but
most-
he has practiced abundance everywhere he goes. That's what I do too, because he does it,
Mhm.
and then it comes back, and it's like it's almost such a greedy. It's like a greedy thing to do in
Because
my
it
opinion.
does come back.
Because like I know it's gonna work, so
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna keep doing that.
But
Why wouldn't
Sam's
I-
an example of that. And we
Yeah.
were having this conversation on my solo show, and somebody was just like,
on your my show.
my show on the Raven, and somebody in the chat was just like, love Sam. I can't wait till he stops posting smut. And I was just like, dude, I gotta be honest with you, because they're looking at it through the Christian lens, and I'm like, honestly,
He's
Sam
not gonna
is
stop.
well, he's not going to. He's addicted. No, but he's more of a Christian than most of the Christians that I actually know in real life, and it's like he could be a gatekeeper, which is hilarious when people accuse him of being a gatekeeper. Because as far as I'm concerned, he's not keeping the gate. He's literally got his foot in it, and he's holding it open for everybody. And he's like, come on, dude, come on. And he platforms so many of us, and he's such a genuine guy, and he's such a good guy, and he helps out so much. And I'm like, no, this is not like, whatever your struggle is with whatever your thing is, if his is big booty Latinas, then so be it. But that guy is a guy that is.
I will say a story, and it's not to throw or anyone under the bus, because I really like XG, but I know that there was a point, I think I've even heard it on their show, where XG had brought up to Sam, he's like, hey, like with us specifically, he's like, are we sure that we want to like keep shouting?
with NDS,
Yeah, he's like, we're pushing audiences to other people.
yeah.
And he's like, and they have a good show, and they might go there and not come back. And Sam was like,
Oh man,
you're a Mexican. No, but Sam took him because it's a smart inclination, because XG's a really smart dude.
He is really
with
smart.
podcasting. He's worked hard, and he's like, he understands like the funneling of audiences. And Sam just like, we don't do that here. Like we just we're gonna grow, and other people will grow also. He's
Yeah.
like, we don't do that. He's like, I'm not looking at that. And XG was like, okay.
But that's what happens is Sam helps us grow. Then
Yeah.
Sam literally headlines our live events. Like, it's like I'm always going to look to that dude as like, one of, in a lot of ways, one of my heroes. I listened to Sam Tripoli for a long time before I finally got the balls to make a conspiracy show.
The ball.
The singular ball.
Sorry,
Cancer.
that's not
But
me.
no, it's
man,
fine.
that
was on- no, that was
we're
on-
going to be,
That was on
We're
Cold
we're going to be
on my
critical and tell the truth here. So yeah, I just want to so happy that you linked up with him.
Yep.
So happy that you linked up with him. It is an awesome show.
The LIBOR scandal.
The LIBOR scandal. Let's move on to the LIBOR scandal, because I can't get the taste of Sam Tripoli's penis out of my mouth now. All right.
Oh my God.
So I was asking you, because there's this theme, obviously, with the parents and then the shooters. And then
Yes.
you're talking about the parent and then JonBenet Ramsey. And it's like, what the hell is going on? What do these people do with their kids? Can you talk about the LIBOR scandal a little bit?
Definitely. And we should definitely get into the reason why as well, the conceptual kind of it feels like the conceptual strategic outcome of sacrificing your children in this sort of
Hold
context.
on, wait. I'm sorry. I got to interrupt him again. I have to address this chat. I would like to ask you nicely. Please, goes on watching. If this is true, I would love for you to find the moment, if this actually happened, where Tripoli is talking about
I'm not doing
Bro
this.
Grove on Rogan's. If that's
Didn't
true,
he just recently go back on Rogan? I don't know.
I don't know. But this guy's the homie, goes on watching, and he's been saying that he remembers it, but and I don't know if that's true. I would love to see that clip.
This is one of those things where if you keep saying a lie, it becomes true. That kind of thing.
Well, good. I hope he helps us to accomplish that. So goes on watching. Consider this my official asking nicely. So go on. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. That's the policy I took whenever William Ramsey suggested to me that you remember Edgar Madison Welch, the shooter who went into Comet Ping Pong Pizza, who after just getting back from Haiti, and whose father ran the production company in Hollywood known as Forever Young Productions, right? Which is just insane, knowing the Haiti trafficking connection to Laura Silsby and every other
that
thing.
Information is enough for me to believe him.
But it was that I believe 100%, and I think it's proven. But the connection that he had suggested was that Edgar Madison Welch, who died, by the way, not too long ago, a couple years maybe at most, probably not even that long, in a routine traffic stop. Right, he ends up getting shot to death by one of the officers on scene, and it seemed very just convenient. But it turns out. Williams said Edgar Madison Welch could be the brother of Haley Welch, Haktua girl.
What?
And I was like, dude, after he told me that, I just took it to tinfoil hat, didn't try and confirm it at all. I was like, man,
hell yeah,
we're running with this one, you know what I mean? But I had to. It's too good. But anyway, I thought that was hilarious. And then Bonnie Blue as well. She had mentioned something in a podcast, and it drove a lot of attention at the time about how her father was actually Jimmy Savile.
Wait, the thousand penises girl?
Yes, that girl.
Yeah, that girl.
Yeah. So
she had mentioned in a podcast that her father was Jimmy Savile.
She says it directly.
The guest that's coming on next sent me a video saying that Joe Rogan is like a Aleister Crowley, and they do like an overface, and I was like, I don't care what happens, I believe it now.
Well, did you see when I did an overlap? I did an overlap of Trump's face and Aleister Crowley's face, and they're perfect. And I was just like goofing around, and then after I did it, I was like, that's kind of crazy, though. I ain't gonna lie to you. So, I think if you lay over people's faces, but who knows? That's fascinating, though. She says that.
Dude, I saw the same thing with, I just saw a picture of J.D. Vance overlaid with Michael Aquino. Like,
I'm going to start overlaying my face with like high-profile shooters.
Small red triangles.
Yeah, small red triangles. I think I'm gender inverted. Because I think I have a theory that like just human faces will kind of, if you overlap them, they'll make a third face, and you'll go, look. And it's like, I think actually that's just what's happening here. So who knows?
I do really believe there's actively still to this very day, well-entrenched systematic programs involving breeding experiments. And I think that this provides individual operatives with undocumented children to a certain extent as well. And this is for experimental reasons, as well as abuse, as well as potentially even farming for the enterprise itself, as far as organ harvesting and things of that nature. Because so many of the children victims who were aging out of like the Dutroux network, let's say, they would inevitably be hypnotized, taken to a club where they're sadistically abused, and then to their final destination where they're essentially murdered in the context of a snuff film, and usually in the fashion of an occult ritual sacrifice, which is always seemingly a part of this. And I remember it was the Order of Abraxas, the which they call Abrasax, that specific local chapter in Belgium, and it was the high priestess. Yeah, exactly. And it was the high priestess of that order who had ordered a And well, whenever the authorities raided their property of this cult in the area, I think Charleroi, or I can't remember where it was actually, but still, when they raid the property, they find jars of blood. They find this obviously what looked to be some sort of sacrificial altar. Then they had linked an old abandoned mine shaft to this network where they were taking these children to then further abuse them. They said they had underground facilities where they were then offering up subscription model abuse to various pedophile perpetrators who would then go and exploit the children at every level they desired. And that in itself is just like that is the most extraordinarily disturbing story and case that I've ever studied in my life, which is that of the Dutroux case. But I will say,
crazy, man. The subscription model,
right?
Yeah. But you know
exactly.
Why? Oh,
yeah.
Well, speaking of subscription models, guys,
if you want to continue to abuse,
well, no, don't say that. Don't say that. It's a Christian show.
Wait, but there's a caveat.
Yes. Okay. So
it's nice.
If you guys want to continue watching this, it'll release in its entirety in about a week. But if you want to keep watching it right now, engaging in the live chat, et cetera, patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad is where you want to go. Or you can go over to Austin's YouTube page and subscribe. Don't be an asshole. Subscribe. And it'll continue streaming on his page. So if you're a Patreon poor and you can't afford it because you're disgusting and you don't have the funds and whatever, we'll go on over to Austin, the Underclass podcast.
But we are watching. I'm watching that number. If it doesn't go up, we're going to cut it off there too.
100%. If that number doesn't go up, we're going to remember that. You people suck. All right, guys. I mean, subscription-based abuse is what this is, right?
And I promise you, I'll tell you about LIBOR, but just on that point, as far as the subscription model, it looks like this applies to the wider underground pedophile network that I think is again, it's been very well facilitated by what I believe to be the nexus of this sort of coexisting a strategic kind of deliberate system of trafficking, abuse, and every other thing you could imagine under the sun, essentially, in this depraved sort of way. And what you see is essentially there's a connection to, so North Fox Island, right, was an island off the coast of Michigan that essentially was hosting human hunting parties by an individual, a prominent pedophile by the name of Francis Sheldon. And he inevitably, he was like a sort of an Epstein type in a way, but I think even more powerful, which is why he escaped any sort of justice or accountability. And because inevitably he ends up, after the investigation is ongoing, he escapes the country and flies to the Netherlands, where they have these very suspect pedophile laws that seem to allow for grooming and certain abuse to take place with underage children, as long as they have parental consent. And even then, the process of proving parental consent within the court system in the Netherlands is very difficult. One of the most difficult things. Honestly, it feels like the system itself is structured for that very reason, to benefit and insulate all of these prominent, perpetrators from any accountability taking place. But what they were offering, and by the way, Francis Sheldon later up, he resurfaces later on at some child care organization, an orphanage with little boys on his lap. So clearly he was still effectively pursuing the very same, depraved, sinister proclivities. But that was what was being offered. And Padika magazine was one of the publications that were being utilized to advertise in the back for this pedophile industry, using code words and things like that. But basically, they were offering the human honey, human honeypots, but the human hunting parties were being offered as a part of this subscription-based model and being advertised in this way as well. And so it makes a lot of sense when that specific network, through investigating the Oakland County killer case, you discover that this is a wider network that doesn't only, suggest that this is obviously, kind of isolated to this one case or this one scandal. It seems like this provided us with another credible window into the truly entrenched system itself. And so as you have the coexisting of organized crime, syndicates, just kind of running plausible deniability cutouts on behalf of the intelligence apparatus, and this is the way of the world. I mean, this has been happening for far too long, and
it's
and
just
anyone,
wild because it's our speculation that they're doing subscription based trauma crap in underground facilities, and then that's just conspiracy theory until you find some rabbit hole that actually leads you to the conclusion that that is the case. But it's so rampant. We were just talking about it the other day. Amanda Bynes comes out and she goes, Dan Schneider impregnated me at 13, which is, Dan Schneider being the Nickelodeon executive. And then when you think about that whole, I mean, that's like, because we're talking about underground crap. This is happening on the surface, right in our faces, in our entertainment. And it reminded me of that Drake Bell situation where Drake Bell was part of a documentary. I forgot what it was called, but it was all about how he was abused by like his management. Well, interestingly enough, that documentary is released in like 2024, the one about Drake Bell being abused. And Drake Bell himself is in Mexico in the previous years under a name Drake Campana, which just means bell in Spanish, right? Which is hilarious. But the reason he flees to Mexico is because he is dealing with sexual assault charges. He's being accused of grooming and sexually abusing a minor. And this case takes place in like 2021. And he goes through the whole thing, and there's a settlement. And basically the charges that he gets stuck with is like, okay, it was true, but he didn't get hit with sexual assault. Instead, he got hit with some really convoluted charge, right? And it was like, if you read the charge, you'd be like, I don't even know what that actually means. And then after that whole case settles in like 2022, then 2 years later, he comes out with a documentary and goes, but they did it to me. It's so rampant in just, Hollywood spheres, high-end political spheres, anybody of influence and power. It's like, it's not a conspiracy theory. People get really weird, too. They'll still say that, despite having the Epstein thing, which maybe we could talk about that a little bit, whatever the hell's going on, the developments with the Epstein files. A whole, just constantly dangling this carrot in front of your face. But it's if you pay attention to any of these stars, it's obvious in so many ways, in the biggest ones. So I just think that that's wild because, Homeboy was going through the process, getting accused of it, settles in court, and then all of a sudden comes out with a documentary about how it happened to him. I'm like, that's an unbelievable level of damage control.
Oh yeah, and you talk about Amanda being forcefully impregnated basically at 13. Like there's plenty of examples of throughout the networks of abuse, like Regina Louf and the X dossier for the Dutroux affair, just legitimately being forced to perform abortions, after being impregnated by abusers. And then they also, because she was kind of a generational asset of the network, her grandmother had actually kind of forced her into it from a very early age, and allowed, even gave a key to the household that Regina lived in to her abuser, who would pick her up and trigger her alters into essentially behaving in certain submissive ways. And they, it was so much worse than that, man. Just reading through the bestiality, these young girls. Yeah, man. I mean, I'm telling you, pregnant girls who are being forcefully kind of just forced into miscarriages through the abuse. It's I'm telling you, man, it's something that you don't even want to honestly overexpose yourself to the details, because it's something I'll never forget.
It's hard, man, because we talk about these things. We talked earlier about how comedy really helps to sort of swallow the pill. But yeah, you're right. You can't look at it too much. I mean, we're talking inescapable situations in underground tunnel systems and military bases. And then we're talking about dangling it right in front of your face. Somebody in the chat said Jamie Lynn Spears. Same thing happened to Jamie Lynn Spears, Britney Spears' younger sister. You look at all these people. Amanda Bynes lost her mind. Britney Spears lost her mind. These people are just destroyed from this trauma. And it's happening not only in these inescapable situations underground, it's happening right in your face. And these people are having breakdowns and they're asking for help. And the media and the paparazzi paints them like crazy people.
That's like the most bizarre part, right? That like they have made an example of the people who do it, and they put them in center stage.
Yep.
And
how crazy is that?
For everyone to see. And then there are varying levels. Then there are people in these like underground caves, which we don't really necessarily get to see. But then there are these mid-level people. And I think the Columbine shooters might fall into that sort of category of this like mid-level. We know who they are, but they're not quite celebrities. They're not, I wouldn't call them celebrities, but like they are of men of renown.
Man.
I guess, could you call that is that a Nepo
Yeah,
baby?
it's like, what do you make of that? Like that sweep, like it's like a generational sweep where it's like almost like they're telling us like, yeah, like we're so blatant with it that we can do it to every level of society.
And then they go, yeah, go ahead, ask for help.
Ask some questions.
Well, they put them out there, like you said, ask for help. Go on, tell the world you need help. See how many people respond.
Right. Yeah, and I think that obviously they were basically immortalized, the two shooters, Eric and Dylan, right? And I think that you have, to this day, you have kind of this faction of this digital avenue, which seems to be a radicalization pipeline that's been very well established, and I think by design as well. Just considering utilizing a Discord, right? How often you see that now in the modern mass shooting manifestos, or
The
even
usage
just
of Discord.
Yeah, even the conversation logs and things of that nature, like with Tyler Robinson and his furry fetish friend Lance Twiggs, who has just disappeared off the face of the earth, and seems probably due to the fact that they're in protective custody for the feds, is my opinion, because I read about. Yeah, they're in Valhalla with Charlie, man. But I will say that it's interesting to realize that, because the Columbine effect itself, right? Just the phenomenon that followed, and the concept. It really introduced the concept of a mass shooting into public consciousness, and really in many ways.
Put it in vogue.
Yeah, and so I just see so much of this, being a perfect example of the kind of underhanded level of, let's say, I explained it in my episode as essentially the facade of virtue, right? That these authorities kind of utilize as a mask, right? And I explained it as this facade of virtue, drenched in moral corruption, reflects the cunning nature of our unending adversary. And that is really my opinion in terms of the common enemy that we all do share, and the political partisan lens that I think is a major mistake that many people make on a daily basis due to their social engineering conditioning at such an effective and efficient level. But before I forget, though, I got to tell you about LIBOR, so I don't.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Tell us about LIBOR, and then I have another derailment after this. But please go ahead.
Awesome.
Let's talk about LIBOR a little bit, because I think it's important.
So this was obviously a manipulation of the international finance rate at the time, which was very interesting. It was especially considering this happened in 2012, following the major economic crisis in the housing market of 2008, right? The major bubble pop. And so it seemed like there were all these various investigations that were being conducted in terms of the just financial industry, and how there was obvious corruption in regard to kind of setting the stage for the economic crisis and the crash itself, but then choosing the winners and losers and the ultimate consequential outcome on the back of that very financial crisis that was kind of strategically. Always we have this boom bust cycle, and it's obviously we know, if you study The Creature from Jekyll Island and you realize what the Federal Reserve has truly done to the banking system and in the U.S. and undermining the value of the dollar, and all along the way, while introducing this intelligence cutout, in terms of Bitcoin and the digital currency, which is really going to lead us into the totalitarian technocratic state, right? But so the LIBOR scandal essentially you have all of these corrupt, fraudulent trades that were being conducted leading up to the crash with all of these, and so you have significant fines for these major financial organizations and at the highest level of the industry. And so there is a court case that's essentially set up in 2012. And this is very, as far as just, there's no way this is a coincidence, because this is a direct connection between both fathers of Adam Lanza and James Holmes. And essentially
it's so insane, by the way. When I first heard of this, I was like, number one, how have I not heard about this? And number two, how could this ever be presented to the public as coincidence?
Exactly. And you know, I think most of it was essentially memory hold after they tried to kind of counteract the exposure of this specific kind of avenue of what was being just brought to public attention in this sort of transparent way. But it was very much just, it looked like the Mockingbird media kind of globbed onto that narrative in a way to misdirect the public, and also sort of false debunking as well, which took place at one point, which was proven to be a just legitimate lie and an attempt at kind of damage control. But that typically happens in these cases, so it didn't shock me at all. But they're both set to testify, basically, the fathers of James Holmes and Adam Lanza.
Right.
And this is so crazy to me, because if you understand who James Holmes' family was, then you realize that he has a direct connection to his grandfather being among military intelligence, even being trained at the Monterey Language Institute, which is the same institution where Lee Harvey Oswald was trained to speak such fluent Russian before he went into the fake defector program at Atsugi Air Force Base in Japan, where he's stationed with Kerry Thornley, who would then create the New Age Discordianism religious occult, kind of organization. And by the way, write a book called The Idle Warriors, which predicted all of this just before JFK was assassinated, came out that very year in '63. And it documents essentially the exact same story of Lee Harvey Oswald defecting to the Soviet Union, is essentially this story, and then coming back and committing a targeted assassination on the president. That was in this book called The Idle Warriors. And he was then later named by Garrison, right? Jim Garrison, throughout the investigation of JFK's assassination, as being one of the clear and obvious, what's it called when, what is it called? There's a term for it. Whenever he was it's not imposter, damn it. It's Lee Harvey Oswald had multiple people who were essentially trying to impersonator. Thank you. Oh my God, I was losing my mind. So anyway, yeah, basically Garrison named Kerry Thornley as one of Oswald's impersonators leading up to the Dallas assassination, and he was the one who was kind of spotted in I believe in New Orleans at a time, because he worked out of Guy Bannister's office at the same time Lee Harvey Oswald did, which is the intelligence connection to 544 Camp Street, which was a naval intelligence operation where they planned the assassination, and where Lee Harvey Oswald would be strategically kind of put into position in terms of when he gets caught on camera handing out flyers for the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. And that in itself is and then he even does like a major media debate with a huge personality that was in favor of, I believe, maybe he opposed Castro, and Oswald was taking the kind of the counter point in attempting to debate that. I can't recall now. It could have been vice versa, but either way, you can see he's a deliberate asset of the intelligence community, being kind of strategically positioned before they hang him out to dry and crucify him as a patsy. And so anyway, it always blew my mind that you had such a direct connection to even the individual who incorporated the Process Church of the Final Judgment in Louisiana. He was also directly affiliated with David Ferry, with Guy Bannister, with all the same people, with Kerry Thornley. and they were all members of this kind of priesthood where they practiced black magic, and they had manuals, mind control manuals, that discuss hypnotism as a clear and obvious, just strategic method, right? With utilizing a perfect chemical recipe to kind of put you in that a suggestible state and keep you in a dissociative state while they program you. I think that's what I mentioned the Discord chat, because I was kind of like, I was kind of weighing the conceptual idea of like a strategic intelligence operation in regard to mind control being leveraged in modern day, and utilizing some of these social media, even what chat or what is Discord's just like essentially
like
communication,
supposedly private chat, not a private chat, but encrypted. Is it encrypted?
I don't think so, but who knows? I think maybe you could have an encrypted private Discord server, but I definitely I was just considering the notion that what if, let's say, some sort of young person who fits the perfect character profile is then on a short list of being a priority target, and then they maybe kind of seduce them into joining a private Discord chat server, and then maybe you then have a one-on-one with some sort of mind manipulator, social engineer, psychological warfare operative who's going to present you with certain videos. And at first they might not seem like there's anything, that's potentially just, let's say, just as far as like the I don't know, criminal intent being obvious in terms of what they're attempting to do as far as the psychological manipulation aspect of it. But then you clearly could potentially just imagine a reality where some of the videos could even be layered with subliminal programming. And then who knows what it takes to leverage or just tap into electromagnetic radio frequency system. I know they can do this with your phone at this point, as far as even when you have your phone turned off, when you used to be able to remove the battery, the NSA could still turn on your phone, activate it whenever they so choose to. And I think that is interesting, because I also imagine we should all probably try and insulate ourselves from EMF as much as possible, because I definitely have read studies about how it disrupts your REM sleep, all these various things that it affects your psychological
gives you ass
patterns.
cancer, I'm sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, I just kind
real
of
quick, I just want to say on that topic of like Discord and being subjected to that kind of stuff, it is like you start with an individual who probably has a record of trauma. This kind of goes into the whole free range MK Ultra victims things that we talk about. The prerequisite is trauma. If you can get somebody who is traumatized and also has some sort of a military intelligent relative, that helps a lot, because then you have an in. But you have this person, and if you can, because I guess the Discord is really there to radicalize them. You've got a candidate, and then you're remote traumatizing them. So we always use this euphemism of like where you used to have, like, let's say Clockwork Orange, where you strip them, their eyeballs open and you subject them to all of this really radical media. You no longer have to do that. And in fact, if you can just pre-select a traumatized individual and then funnel them into some sort of a Discord group, and then remotely you're just sitting there doing effectively the same thing. You're subjecting them to this thing. Partly you're hoping for the straw that breaks the camel's back. If they're already a victim of childhood trauma, then there's a higher likelihood that they're on dissociative SSRIs.
Exactly.
So that increases the level of programmability. So that's where you're talking to them and you're implanting these ideas. So you're subjecting them to the radicalizing imagery. You're feeding them these narratives to which they're highly susceptible because of the dissociative SSRIs, and they're already a traumatized individual, so they're kind of on the cusp of something. Then all you have to do is just do one of those kind of honeypot operations where you figure out how to get a gun in their hand. You know what I mean? One way or another. And it's a well-oiled machine. It works works super good.
Oh, no doubt. And I think,
and also, I realized they were doing that to me on Timeline Cleanse. That's what the chat was doing. I don't know how much of the chat was actually working for the feds, but they were just subjecting me gore videos all the time. And it's like, so you don't need that that room with the TV. I mean, the internet is a never-ending source of gore and trauma, and that's not a problem. You can get your hands on that pretty easily. So yeah, I think it's all done that way now.
Definitely. But as far as just James Holmes' father, I do think it's still important to at least provide the details as far as the connection there to LIBOR. And it was Dr. Robert Holmes. All right. He receives a PhD in statistics in 81 from Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley. And then he gets a job at the San Diego-based H&C Software Corporation, right? And this is from 2000 to 2002, when he was apparently running this neural network company, and DARPA, even beginning in 98, worked alongside this specific agency, developing Cortronic neural networks, which would allow machines to interpret oral and visual stimuli to think like humans. So we already have a kind of a strange connection to what seems like sort of transhumanism in a way, but definitely as far as programming, there's an insane connection to the this DARPA program that essentially was trying to create the perfect soldier, right? And it's very strange because I'm trying to recall the name of the actual program, because that in itself was kind of very straightforward and in your face and brazen in terms of what they were truly attempting to achieve. But I will say that alone is fascinating. And then you have this Cortronic concept being developed by H&C Software's chief scientist and co-founder, Robert Hecht Nielsen. And so H&C then merges with this Minneapolis-based Fair Isaac Corporation, which would be FICO. So this is very interesting because this is a computer analysis and decision-making company, but it's very obviously, if you understand the FICO score connection to just the individual citizens' financial score and as far as their debt and things of that nature being considered and in terms of receiving loans and things of that nature, right? Obviously, your FICO score matters. And so it directly affects the average individual as far as how they're able to engage within the financial system itself. And so then you have emerging with as far as Holmes, when he was 20, just James Holmes, he worked as a camp counselor at Camp Max Strauss of the Jewish Big Brothers and Sisters of Los Angeles. And he apparently even, this is according to the Jewish Journal, among other tasks, Holmes helped to teach boys between the ages of 7 to 10 in archery. Which is very interesting to me because he later would be a part of the DARPA program, which I had mentioned. His father was obviously working alongside DARPA for quite some time before any of this actually took place. But so James Holmes also happens to be the grandson of Lieutenant Colonel Robert Holmes, who's one of the first Turkish language graduates of the Army Language School, later becoming the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California, as I mentioned about the Lee Harvey Oswald connection. But you have graduating from the Turkish language class in 1948, the grandfather Robert Holmes spent a career in the Army, which included more than a few intelligence-related assignments as well. So typically, you would have apparently these military intelligence officers. They would be very well, at least fluent in Turkish, and served. He served with both the Defense Intelligence Agency and the Central Intelligence Agency at the U.S. Embassy in Ankara, or the Consulate General in Istanbul, apparently. So this is his grandfather. And so then you have this individual at the Salk Institute named Terence Sejnowski. And it looks like, because you have James Holmes studying at this institute, right? This Salk Institute, which they run all these DARPA programs. And so it looks like when he is studying at the Salk Institute, the director was running a computational neurobiology laboratory, and he was involved with. And so it looks like you also have an interview with the Cognitive Science online in 2008, and they made a comment about recent studies of the human brain. And so this cognitive psychology researcher at the intelligence community linked RAND Corporation, which has a strong footprint in Laurel Canyon. I remember when I covered that, actually, they're very geographically close to that of the Lookout Mountain Laboratory, which I think obviously thousands of Hollywood films were produced there. I honestly believe that was the location the moon landing was filmed at as well. And there was actually whistleblowers. One of the, so whenever Lookout Mountain Laboratory was sold privately and out from under the kind of intelligence or control of the property itself, it went into private ownership, and the individual who claimed the property blew the whistle, saying that he found leftover basically production equipment for the moon landing on one of the stages in Lookout Mountain Laboratory, which I did find interesting. But anyway, yeah. I know. But yeah, anyway, the last point with James Holmes here is that you had there was artificial intelligence being very much pursued as a part of this DARPA program that he was involved with at the Salk Institute. And so it does seem like they definitely learned how to, because this was the let me pull because Anschutz Medical Center, right, where he was also working at the medical campus in Denver. This is where he was studying when he was actually receiving all of the ammunition and the various bombs that he would set up in his apartment and things of that nature. And this is a campus, and no red flags were raised. No one, called this into concern in any real way. It's just strange that this was obviously conducted under the nose of the authorities involved on this campus, and nothing was really came of that in any real way either. But yeah. So anyway, it's fascinating to see that you have these ridiculous connections to James Holmes' grandfather, who also was very much, I think, involved in the path of his father, of James Holmes' father, and so the LIBOR connection really comes in the form of because if you remember the James Holmes Aurora massacre, the shooting at the Cinema 16, it looks like that all happened within a couple of months of Sandy Hook would come just directly after that event. And so that alone is fascinating to me. It was December 14th, 2012 when Sandy Hook happened. And so it's just kind of the timing of it is very, very much suspect in my mind. But
not just the timing, right, Austin, but the magnitude as far as cultural impact goes.
Oh, no doubt. Yes. And also, I talked to this individual. His name's JJ Vance. He does a show called Operation GCD. He's a super interesting guy. He was like a private investigator for a time, and he had apparently gone through some sort of course at Sandy Hook High School. And I was talking to him about this the other day, and I asked him, because I've been under the impression for a long time that was not an operating elementary school at the time whenever the actual mass shooting event took place. And it's very interesting to actually see how the parking lot was clearly not in any way was it structured, or at least I believe it wasn't staged as if it was an active parking lot, right? And so you had
totally overgrown and unkept, and right, it wasn't that like the whole. It was in a state of kind of like not dilapidation, but it wasn't being taken care of. Didn't look active.
Right, exactly. And it was I think just seeing both fathers expected to testify in the LIBOR scandal. It was set for June of 2008, And that's the exact month that obviously Aurora happens. And so they no longer testified at the LIBOR. Yeah. So, I mean, as far as the court case itself, it was essentially just undermined in broad daylight, and nothing really came of it except for a few. There were only a handful of low-level financial it was members of a few different financial companies that were involved in the market crash that effectively they did a little prison time for insider trading, but that was it. And so you really had no legal consequences in regard to this. And so Adam Lanza's father, Peter Lanza, he was the VP and tax director at GE Financial. And the father of James Holmes, Robert Holmes, was the lead scientist for the credit score company FICO, as I mentioned. Now, both of them are set to testify before the U.S. Senate in the ongoing LIBOR scandal in 2012 in June. And so this is when I think it's important to understand that what LIBOR is really, I had mentioned it's rigging in the international interest rate. But so LIBOR was for a time, I think they changed it now. I believe the standard has shifted. I forget what the new, they called it something different now. So it's no longer LIBOR as the effective standard in terms of managing the financial industry internationally. And so this is how I believe many of the Western Alliance countries who control the banking system, this is what you do. It's the confessions of an economic hitman just kind of coming to fruition. And so, yeah, I think seeing this and then understanding that LIBOR is the average interest rate at which banks can borrow from each other, that alone, is a major implication as far as just kind of controlling and manipulating, international finance. And so you have 16 international banks which were implicated in this scandal. They were accused of rigging contracts worth trillions of dollars, and HSBC, which was the company that Robert Holmes worked for, was already fined $1.9 billion, and 3 of their low-level traders were arrested. So that was the extent of the accountability. And yeah, Robert Holmes and Peter Lanza just escaped any sort of public, let's say, they definitely didn't actually in any way have to testify publicly or also even make a statement, which is just in itself, how does that come to pass?
So what are we? I mean, it looks like then this is the trade.
It feels like it. It feels like there's also, and I wonder, because if you're, was it a green light sacrifice their children to manipulate them and control them in the context of exposing the scandal, or was it James Holmes or Robert Holmes and Peter Lanza were actively a part of this very network that we speak on in terms of the underlying power cabal who are running these domestic operations in a clandestine way, and are they kind of willing and able, which I see so often. That's kind of
what I'm. Well, that's what I'm leaning towards, and the reason is because how long it takes. Like, you have to have this history of like trauma and dissociative substances, and you know what I mean. It's not like you could just do this to any person. They have to be a candidate for. There's a selection process for a reason. There's programs like whatever the gifted and talented programs, or there's processes that these MK Ultra programs, or there's some subsidiary programs put you through. There's a process. It's an entire thing. It's not just like you can pluck any rando off the streets. So I mean, given their how would you say this, the magnitude of the things that they were involved in, I would imagine that this is a process that their kids were groomed for.
Yes, I do. I definitely believe this. And you mentioned the gifted program. Well, Dylan Klebold happened to be a member of the CHIPS program, which is very strange.
They
obviously,
just put chips straight into your.
And that, by the way, it was like nanobots and even nanobot particles are allegedly a part of this program actively in modern day, where where they can introduce this into your system and then kind of remotely trigger you as a Manchurian candidate of some kind. And that makes a lot more sense to me, especially after I researched that of what was it, Dr. Robert Duncan, I believe his name was. And I think I mentioned this to you guys once before because of how fascinating and extraordinary the connection is to modern Manchurian candidates and this never seemingly, being halted as far as the covert operational standpoint of things. It seems like with the vast majority of these programs that have been publicly exposed with this false sense of transparency, I mean, we've pointed to that of the church committee hearings, and allegedly Frank Church was sexually blackmailed by Claudia Mullen, and which was a human honeypot created by the intelligence apparatus and trained at a remote location in the woods, where with what she claimed to have been 70 other young victims who were all conditioned into how they could sexually please an adult while also kind of pulling in information from them in this kind of deliberate, deceptive way. And so it does look as if this has been longstanding, and there's no way.
That's my thing is, so Uncle Ted here, which is a great username, says, and all of them were in therapy before, meaning the two boys were in therapy before. I'd be interested if you can go back and track the careers of their fathers. Which one came first? Did the birth of their children come first, or were they successful and then their children were born? Because a lot of this, what seems to be therapy, the rapist, the therapist, is actually like a selection process. We talked to William Ramsey not long ago, and it was like on this kind of Manchurian Candidate, and we talked about the film. I think it was just called like Manchurian Candidate or something like that. And you could see that when these programs were developed is around the same time that we start to initiate these, medical health professionals, when we start to create, professions like therapists and psychologists, and we start prescribing SSRIs. But the way he frames it, it looks like a lot of them they worked in tandem with these programs, and they were meant to be sort of the selectors. They were out there putting the feelers out, knowingly or unknowingly, to try to find who would be a good fit for these, these intelligence operations where they're trying to disassociate and program individuals. And so it's like, what happened? Did you have a kid? Did you get tied up in a therapy program with your kid? Did somebody eventually come to you and go, they're a good candidate for XYZ? And then did eventually something happen where you were given a way to success if your kids were allowed to be rolled into this program? Something to that effect, I suspect, is what actually took place.
Absolutely. I think it's kind of proven through the lens of Wayne Harris, Eric Harris's father, because that is where the Plattsburgh connection comes into play. But also it's important to understand that, a lot of Eric's background was kind of strategically memory hold in a way. And I think it's because it was far too convenient to in terms of just obviously just forcing the official narrative to kind of disintegrate before your eyes and fall apart in every way. And I think that just understanding where Eric or Wayne Harris kind of comes into play, as far as he was involved with military intelligence, right? And I think that in itself is very important, because he obviously was it was Wayne and Kathy Harris were his parents, and he had a brother as well that was like 3 years older than him. But Wayne, his father, had spent the vast majority of his life basically as a pilot, right, for the Air Force and running these transport planes. And so he's stationed at like 8 different bases throughout his military career. He starts out in Kansas, he goes to Ohio and Michigan and New York, and all of those locations I think perfectly represent the geographical footprint of the networks that he very well could have been affiliated with, in terms of just I think he had far more of a role to play in the lead up to 9/11 than people would understand. And that's why the Flight Safety Services Corporation connection is very important. But he was allegedly forced into retirement due to cutbacks in the military budget. And he's stationed at Plattsburgh Air Force Base. and this is in upstate New York. And in 1993, he served, I believe, after serving 20 years in the military, right? This is when the family moves to Jefferson County, where he got the job in Colorado at Flight Safety Services Corporation in Inglewood, which is where he was from, actually. He grew up there. So that in itself, Littleton is like it's been described as a safe community, right? Which I thought was interesting itself, as far as how these clandestine operations are truly greenlit in these various locations. I think they have to have a sort of a vital footprint in that area to allow the facilitation of the clandestine operation to basically be efficiently conducted, and also have the individual assets in place to misdirect the public whenever they're poking holes in that official narrative, which is clearly expected if you're attempting to run some sort of I explained it as what looks to me like a modern Gladio operation in many ways, utilizing the strategy of tension, right? Not only to effectively, lay the groundwork to influence the general public to basically support anti-gun legislation. And I think that was pivotal, and as far as many of these mass shootings, because there are layered agendas playing out, and they will always kind of fully exploit those avenues, in my opinion, and push further the agenda into a dystopian direction, which is always the goal. And so he gets this job at Flight Safety Services Corporation. But it's interesting because Wayne, it's very strange as far as the entire family is described as being essentially like the picture perfect family, right, by some of the neighbors. But many of the witness testimonies come from members of the military who were stationed with him at Plattsburgh during the time. And I also think it's very strange that Plattsburgh, while they were even still stationed there, was basically shut down as an active military base. And so that makes a lot more sense, because it has an 18-layer subterranean bunker system at the facility, which is where I believe a lot of the behavioral modification experimentation took place, according to some of the whistleblowers who were a part of the programs. You had scientists who came out and claimed to be ethically opposed to what was being conducted in those subterranean levels of the Plattsburgh military base, which again makes a lot of sense. But I will say that you had members of like Eric's former friends, because he was even a part of like the Plattsburgh little league team at like 12 years old, I believe. And one of the friends said after the shooting that grew up with him that his mouth just dropped, right? He was a typical kid. He didn't seem anything like what is portrayed on TV, which is strange. But you also have additional connections to witnesses who claim to have been a part of the experimentation with Eric, and that he had even made a statement prior to them moving to Littleton, that he was tired of the kind of enduring such just extraordinary levels of experimentation at a point where I believe he was even sexually abused potentially by one of the scientists who were conducting this. But so it looks like Wayne Harris,
to show
right?
You though, right? Like if his friends didn't pick up on it, we're talking a sophisticated version of creating that secondary programmable personality, right? Because it's like they're not even seeing him as they just see him as a normal kid. So it's jaw dropping, like you said, for them to have seen what it all came to be. So this is like they've really segmented and created this programmable personality, because that's what happens in the dissociative state, is that this secondary programmable personality emerges. And then ideally, if you want to do like a patsy or you want to do like a Manchurian candidate, you keep them separate. Exactly. And so to his friends, he doesn't even look any different. He looks just like a normal kid.
Right. And I think there was a very unique brand of programming that we've seen too often, as far as the character profiles of these mass shooters, and that involves like this strange sort of like Aryan neo-Nazi ideology that they kind of attach to it, which is very interesting. And it comes back up in terms of the Star Chamber and the leadership that were wearing Nazi uniforms while they were abusing children in a breeding experiment, but also choosing which children they would tap for future leadership in the White Eagle Underground, which we'll get to, which basically the point being is that it was genealogical. As far as like the genealogy of the individual is how they would go through the process in deciding and choosing. You would become a future leader of the White Eagle Underground and be a member potentially of the Star Chamber, which is the upper echelon and leadership faction of the organization itself. But anyway, that plays into it. But
what were they looking for genetically?
Yeah, see, that's the strange part. Even the mother, who her name was Belinda Schultz, she, I believe, was strategically targeted due to her genealogical background by the cult itself, which it was described within police documents as being a cult. But they said a cult filled with rogue intelligence operatives, which, in my opinion, and they even say international as well. So Russian, there was some Russian influence, but this was far more considered to be rogue intelligence officials from the U.S. military intelligence apparatus that had gone rogue and were running this network. This is through the lens, though, of a local investigator, who I believe was far too over his head. Essentially, he was in over his head. He wasn't quite understanding the scope of this network that he had stumbled upon, and therefore he's trying to make sense of this in his internal documents that he's recording. Right, the criminal witness accounts, or just the witness accounts as well. But yeah, I'll talk about that right after I discuss Plattsburgh, just to finish that point of the mind control nature of what truly could have happened to Eric Harris. Because again, his father, decorated Air Force, officer, and later on even was apparently considered very exceptional and as far as his leadership capabilities, and was trusted by the U.S. Air Force with some of its most highly classified projects, including the B-1 bomber and its newest electronic warfare aircraft that was being used over Kosovo at the time. And so that all was interesting as well. But Dylan Klebold's mother, her name is Sue Klebold, and she claimed that she was told military documents on brainwashing techniques, otherwise known as mind control manuals, had been discovered in the Harris family home. So that already implicates the possibility that the father had already been a kind of let's say, trained in some of these sophisticated methods of psychological programming and mind control manipulation. And so it does look like he was potentially really trained in that behavioral modification program when he was at the military base in Plattsburgh, or before that even. I believe it was I'm trying to remember now which military base it was that he was connected to directly and potentially being trained in the behavioral modification program. But again, it was more or less not entirely substantiated, let's say, right? But it was still allegations that caught my attention directly, because it seems to reinforce the narrative that I believe there's plenty of credible evidence to point to. And so, yeah, it's she claimed specifically when she talked to The Guardian as recent as 2016, right, that basically we'd heard a rumor that military training materials on brainwashing techniques had been found in Eric Harris's home, which obviously she claimed had refueled her and her husband's belief that Dylan had been just another victim of the Columbine massacre. And it kind of makes sense, because I talked to a few different Columbine students who allegedly were at the school whenever this took place, and from their accounts, Dylan and Eric, Eric shifted in personality just before the event kind of was triggered, but for the most part, they were all described as just regular kids that in no way seemed to be capable of such, just such extraordinary levels of violence, right? And that's what I think, potentially after going through some of it and reading what feels like was perfectly concocted. FBI, as far as like the FBI's writer room, it feels like this is fan fiction at a certain level, and it perfectly reinforces the official narrative. And so, because I feel like Dylan and Eric were far more likely to have been in this sort of dream state where they felt like they were, engaging in a video game. And that seems to be almost the psychological, let's say, just the position that many of these Manchurian victims, while they're in this dissociative state, find themselves in this kind of dream state. So none of it feels real. And as much as they created the WAD levels, which were diagrams of the school, which were on Doom, right? Like Doom WAD levels, they played Quake and stuff like that. It felt like that could easily be some sort of Sirhan reinforcing the programming at a real additional layer, to where you're actively walking through the school in a video game, committing this violence. And let alone the Columbine tapes and the Hitmen for Hire, where they're filming from their film production class. Eric and Dylan have a camera from their class at Columbine in the school, where they're filming each other as hitmen for hire in black trench coats, who a bullied kid at the school, who's one of their friends, I think it was Chris Morris, who played the bullied kid in the actual video Hitmen for Hire, is trying to hire Dylan and Eric to one of the bullies at the school. And so he asks him how he wants to do it. How do you want us to actually effectively, this target? And he requests a bombing, right? And that alone was very interesting, because it's leading up to the event. And also there's clearly direct connections to FBI. The son of the FBI investigator who led the investigation into Columbine produced that video with Eric and Dylan, which ultimately led to them committing a shooting in the school. And also at the end, it concludes with the entire school blowing up and being destroyed, which was allegedly the goal.
That's so we talked to, because there's just like so many layers of programming to this. We talked to Tom Althouse, who was the original creator of The Matrix, and before what are the
Wachowski
brothers ladies?
Yeah,
respect their genders, please.
They them.
They thumbs. Basically stole his idea, and he talks about to what extent the FBI was interested in his works and all these different things.
Like, stole their ideas is kind of not the correct term. It was more like the agency got hold of the script, or this is how the story goes. They liked it. They wanted something with it, but they realized Tom wasn't the guy that was gonna, he's creative, so he's not gonna play around with whatever they wanted,
because they did want to change a lot about it.
And so they had the Wachowski brothers come in, and these were just the guys that were going to do the thing.
Don't dead name them. But that's so.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, geez, man. But one of the things that he talks about was how strange it was to watch his own creation go on and become sort of like the inspiration for a lot of really horrifying things.
Trench coat being one.
Well, the trench coat and its utilization within these mass shootings.
That scene, yeah.
And that was the Wachowski brothers that did it, because he was like, we were like, Tom, were they supposed to look dumb? And he's like, no, dude, they were never supposed to look dumb. Like, they weren't supposed to wear trench coats and shit. That was something that the Wachowski brothers put in.
It's a very interesting wrinkle to put in, because that scene when they ask him, they're like, "You have any weapons?" and he just with the trench coats, and that's so pervasive in society
too.
But it was never supposed to be there, and it's like,
and then it becomes like the costume for school shooters.
Absolutely, yeah, that is fascinating. I think the it's kind of the revelation of the method in a way, in terms of how they utilize Hollywood propaganda to reinforce a lot of the, agenda items that they hope the subconscious minds of the general public will embrace. And that's what I find so interesting about the kind of conditioning through Hollywood that is so effective, right? And I do see, just as far as the trenchcoat mafia, and that's the direct as far as the direct connection. I believe it was a local network of essentially having an avenue to procure assets, or younger assets that they could then kind of have yeah, just gain easier access to these specific character profiles that would fit for the strategic operation that you're hoping to pursue. And it looks like the Trenchcoat Mafia was dabbling in occultism. I believe certain factions of the Trenchcoat Mafia were far more violent, at least romanticized, kind of violent radical action as a solution of some kind to just kind of I think accelerate. In many ways, you see the accelerationist philosophy play into it, which really plagues the modern mass shooter in a way, which is the fact that sounds good, but it's a fact that basically it's just interesting to me because it looks like the Trenchcoat Mafia was once again they were effectively holding initiatory blood rituals where they were forcing some of the individuals who were attempting to become initiated within the Trenchcoat Mafia. And according to one of the children witnesses who were basically interviewed by an investigator in El Paso County, which is nearby Columbine and Littleton, he knew Eric and Dylan and had seen them at a couple of Trenchcoat Mafia parties at a few different houses, one of which was known to have been in front of a school and near a park. So I found that interesting as well, just as far as the operational standpoint of pursuing an avenue to once again find yourself in a place where you will be overexposed to children in this way. And but yeah, it's crazy because it looks like they were actually having them slice themselves, like cut their forearms, and they would have to shed blood as if they believed that they were modern day vampires, allegedly is what they claimed. And that this was in some sort of sense, which by the way, it made me think that I had read somewhere recently that basically involved in the layered programming of mind control, they will strategically place these fail safes in terms of the programming, because obviously there's a shelf life allegedly as far as the programming is concerned, and if it's not reinforced at certain pivotal moments, then you will wake up to your programming allegedly. And this makes a lot of sense in terms of the Manchurian Candidate film, because if you remember, obviously they had positioned Raymond Shaw, who was obviously the main character, who had gone through some sort of sexual trauma with a strange Oedipus complex with his mother, Angela Lansbury's character, who's this obviously a prominent aristocratic sort of dynastic family that is implementing a coup in real time. And it seems like what is interesting to me more than any of it is basically that whenever he's triggered at the bar, he's sitting there at the bar and he gets a phone call and they ask, is this Raymond Shaw? And once he confirms that it is, they trigger his first layer of programming by suggesting you should pass the time by playing a game of solitaire. And so instantly that layer is triggered. And then as he witnesses the Queen of Diamonds, the first Queen of Diamonds he sees triggers the secondary layer of programming. And then as he sees the next at least two, I think, Queen of Diamonds, I believe it was, then he instantly is in such a suggestible, dissociative state that he's not even present. He doesn't even recognize and acknowledge Frank Sinatra's character when he walks into the bar. And then once he sees the Queen of the card of the Queen of Diamonds again, he leaves the bar and goes straight to the lake and jumps in the lake and fully submerges himself, not knowing as to why. When he wakes up, he had no knowledge as to how he got there. And that in itself makes sense as far as how you would, trigger a Manchurian in this sense. But yeah, it looks like as far as just these very reliable claims coming from the Plattsburgh Air Force Base, where Harris's family was located at the time, claimed that by the age of 10, Harris was drafted into these behavioral modification programs underway there. And basically,
Wait, Austin, were you saying that
were you part of these programs?
No, were you saying that the cutting was part of the trigger mechanism, or do you think
yes,
that was?
Yeah, that was the point I was going to make. Was essentially what the individuals cutting themselves would help trigger them back into their dissociative state, and they would reject essentially these returning memories which is very interesting. How this would provide them with this subconscious kind of misdirection, where they had no ability. As soon as they committed self-harm in that way, it would trigger that layer of reinforcing the programming. And so that in itself was fascinating to me, just as far as seeing the connection directly to that of the higher as far as just the more exclusive membership of the Trenchcoat Mafia, which were obviously, only the initiated who went through the blood ritual would actually be a part of the leadership of the Trenchcoat Mafia. So that in itself is fascinating to me, as well as the level of connections to the Blackjack Pizza restaurant that they were working at the time, which, again, I had mentioned the subway shop murders that happened 10 months after Columbine, because there was an investigation where all of these allegations were being made that it was the hub of a drug trafficking operation that was flooding drugs into the area. And so if the subway shop that's just 2 miles from Columbine is effectively implicated as being one of the strategic hubs of this network, then how could we not imagine the Blackjack Pizza restaurant that they worked at, where the owner actually blew up dry ice bombs in the bathroom, and they in no way were raising red flags for the boys, as they were clearly they were engaging in some very strange experiments behind the Blackjack Pizza as well, and they had this fascination with fireworks, where they would host these firework displays on top of the roof, and one of the owners would take his daughter there, apparently. But very strange. But I will say, unfortunately, I haven't gotten to, dude. I think it's so critical to actually discuss the layered operational standpoint of what was being conducted in terms of Blackjack Pizza and in the wider network of the Brotherhood of the White Temple and the White Eagle Underground. All of this matters. And I also think they were conditioning the children for years ahead of time at Columbine specifically, which who knows, Columbine could be a strategic operational
Wait, do you
hub
mean the shooters, or just the general
the
student
population?
body?
The general population of the school. So
Wow.
not only was there a death education program which had been implemented at the school,
Death education program?
Okay, Austin.
What the
Yeah.
This is what happens every time we talk to him, and it's not your fault. This is our fault.
death education
No,
program?
we catch up with Austin
Yeah.
for 30 minutes. Then we tell him to tell us about everything else that he knows.
Yeah, and he
And
knows a lot.
then we ask him to tell us about the topic, and then we end up doing a part 2.
And then we derail.
Can
him.
we do a
No,
part 2, please?
of
So I
course.
don't-
Yeah, we could do a part 2.
Yeah.
Dude, schedule
Okay, thank
for this. I don't know if we could do this coming week because Thanksgiving's coming up.
Because with this episode, we've covered, you had to cover the LIBOR scandal in order to really properly explain just the first part of the Columbine massacre. And now we have to go into this next part dealing with secret societies.
I have this stuff pulled up about Madeleine McCain, the little girl who went missing in Portugal, and how Ghislaine Maxwell seems to like fit the image of the person that allegedly kidnapped her and all this different stuff. And I Austin is really the only person that I care to, because I'm to the point I don't give a shit about Epstein unless I'm hearing somebody that I actually trust has done research and understands it. And I wanted to go down that. We have to do a part 2.
Yeah.
We have to do a part 2.
Awesome.
Look, Austin, we have another guest coming in really soon, so unfortunately we have to prematurely end this one. I don't know if I should ask you for your plugs.
Hey, I'll keep it short. I promise you.
All right.
It was hilarious though, because I had intended on dropping a bomb to start the episode in terms of this John Wayne Gacy connection that I discovered that just fell into my lap recently in the past few days, because I had come on prior to this and talked to you guys about obviously serial killers just fundamentally disappearing around the same time mass shooters just happen to surface and create this new cultural phenomena. But it's fascinating to me because I mentioned John Wayne Gacy being this kind of also fall guy patsy cutout for the wider network to essentially take the fall. And I believe he kidnapped Johnny Gosch. The paperboy fetish was essentially ordered through him in a certain way. But then also, here's the craziest part, and then I'll drop it and I'll let you guys go. it's basically that John Wayne Gacy, his first victim. So you guys remember Paul Bonacci, right? He was the Franklin scandal victim who's got on the record about Michael Aquino. He was a victim of Lawrence E. King of the Franklin Omaha, credit union scandal. And basically he was even at the foundation of NAMBLA, right? The North American Man Boy Love Association, with members of the Catholic clergy in Boston, Massachusetts. But it turns out that he claimed that he was well aware that John Wayne Gacy potentially abducted Johnny Gosch. But then what I also found out, and there's no way this is coincidental, it looks like Paul Bonacci's mother. So the very first victim of John Wayne Gacy was a kid by the name of Tim McCoy. That was Paul Bonacci's stepbrother.
What? Dude, this is like, this gets into the serial killer thing and like what?
Yes.
Oh my God, bro.
I know, man. It's insane. So yeah. Anyway,
when we end this, go into our Calendly and find a soon open date, please. Don't ask us. Just go in there, find one.
Like I told you, like he always asks. He's like, "Hey, I got something."
Stop asking us. You like are one of the few people. Just schedule yourself.
Yeah,
Thanks,
nobody else
buddy.
do that shit.
Nobody else do that. There's other people that do it. Yeah,
No,
seriously.
dude. Okay, I'll leave you guys with just the fact that I appreciate you so much, and I can't thank you guys enough, man. I'm so grateful that I have these opportunities, that you guys let me on to have these conversations, and that you're willing to let me go a little schizo occasionally, and I apologize for that, but I think it's at least
I like it.
It's a good time, right? I mean, but yeah, it's nothing but love on this end, you guys, and I appreciate you, just so you're aware.
Man. Yo, listen, Austin, I feel like
One of our favorite people.
Yeah, but in the last couple of months, we've been so busy like doing the studio. I feel like the show has been moving not necessarily in another direction, but we've been doing a lot of biblical stuff, a lot of Bible studies. I guess I've been solidifying my relationship with God and that thing there. We've gotten away from that community. I mean, after the whole Tower Gang thing and all this stuff, I've gotten away from that community that I really like. So like, if we haven't been as present on Twitter or whatever, it's not because we're just like, we're spread 15 different ways, but we're building shit, and we want to bring you guys along. We're going to bring you guys along with us.
Well, yeah, I mean, we talked about in the last episode we were with you on, we're doing Bohemian Grove.
Bear with us in this time of growth.
Well, first Friday and Saturday of March. I hope you're here, and I hope you're here for the VIP day. I hope you're here for the performance day. I know our audience loves you, and they're going to want to see you and touch you and harass you in real life.
I'll be there, man. Just tell me the date, and I'll be there for sure.
That's it, man. Well, like I said, first Friday and Saturday in March. We'll be seeing you soon, dude.
Hell yeah,
man.
brother.
And guys, once again, like I always say, go to Austin's YouTube page, follow him there. Go to his I have this right here. Here we go. Go to his Patreon as well. Please support him there, so that way, when you support creators, they're able to do a little bit more creating rather than the ins and outs of life. And we appreciate you guys for doing that. So thank you for supporting us, but go support him too, because this guy's actually like doing real work, stuff that we can piggyback off of.
Yeah, that's right.
Man.
Yeah, man.
No, what you guys are doing, it honestly inspires me, man. And I just appreciate, having this relationship with you guys. I think the dynamic is very special and valuable. And people are desperate, man, just to feel like not represented, but at a certain level to have your ideas represented, I think. And coming from, a truly just genuinely ethical standpoint, I think, where you have the best of intentions. So that's what I respect and admire the most out of you guys, your drive and willingness to just grow. It's like, if you're not attempting to grow every day at every level of who you are as a person, you're going to be taking steps back. That's just, I think, the way of the world. It's how it happens. And so you have to be actively reflecting on who you are and who you hope to become. So yeah, nothing but love, brother. Appreciate you guys.
Amen, brother. Guys, we'll see you in a couple of minutes. Until then, don't forget to obey, submit, and comply. Goodbye.